peace, beautiful beings. I am Tori, the birth keeper. This is my lovely daughter, Kinsley. And we are back here with another video. This time we are sharing Desiree's birth story part 2. She shares with us her hospital birth of her daughter Destiny after she had 2 miscarriages. So trigger warning for this one. We do talk about miscarriage care and how we can nurse our bodies, bring them back, and how we can move forward and continue our fertility journey. So thank you so much for tuning in. At the end of this video, we get to see Kinsley standing for the first time. Okay? We got it on video, so definitely stay tuned. We'll hop right in.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you take us through your second daughter, Destiny? Can you take us
Yes.
through like
So I
pregnancy?
will I will preface my second pregnancy and by saying that I did have 2 miscarriages before I got pregnant with Destiny. And one
I want to pause there. How was the care for yourself like after the miscarriages?
um they were pretty hard. Um and I know that that's not everyone's experience. My first and to piggyback off of what you stated earlier, when I got pregnant again, my oldest daughter was probably about 18 months or something like that. And I found out very early. My cycles are very regular. And so if I'm off by a day or two, I take a test because I already know. And so I found out I was probably like 4 weeks pregnant or something like that, when I took this first test. And the anxiety kicked in. My daughter was 18 months. I'm 21. And I'm like, I'm still trying to get it together, and now I'm getting ready to have 2 children. And so that anxiety kicked in. And by the 5th week, I started to have some bleeding. And so I went to the hospital. Um, I had horrible insurance, so they treated me not well. And it was kind of like, oh, you're miscarrying. Go home and go through that process. And I'm like, wait, what?
No,
And so they sent me home with some Vicodin
like
and told me to just go through the miscarriage process, you
seriously,
know, to
like
and I'm totally I don't have any at this point my introduction into healthcare was like I was like a CNA helping out, elderly people and like nursing homes and stuff. So I didn't know anything about women's health. Even though I had a baby, I just like I said before, I just went through that process. I didn't like really dive into that. So I'm like, and the miscarriage was something I didn't even know anything about. And so I'm like, wait, what? So I go home, I'm going through the motions with that. I went back and forth in the hospital a few times. I was scared. I don't know what's happening. Um, and so through that process, it was a long journey. I started to have very heavy periods. I had extreme back pain, extreme abdominal cramping. Even outside of my period, I bled for a very long time. They thought I had endometriosis. Um, Ovarian cysts came. I mean, it was just like a whole ordeal. And I ended up through my own kind of education and research back on birth control to help with these symptoms. So to help regulate the bleeding, to help with the cramping, to help with this possible endometriosis, which I never got a definitive diagnosis on that. And then to help with these cysts that only came around my cycle time, and then they would kind of go away. They were called hemorrhagic cysts, which only come around your period, and they can sometimes have blood in them, and then which causes more heavy bleeding, and then they can go away. So it was a long journey, and I was on birth control for. I got onto the Depo shot, and I was on that for a while, which that's a whole different conversation.
Me too. For me, it's a no.
Right, right. Yeah, facts. And like I said, at this point I don't know. So I'm only, I'm researching it. Oh, Depo helps. Let me have it,
I
you
was
know.
I was 16 and I was bleeding for 6 months straight on the
Oh my
Depo.
goodness.
That is not.
Wow. Oh my goodness. See, for me it was the exact opposite. I didn't have a period on Depo. And it really helped regulate the symptoms that I was experiencing. But to this day, I really don't even know what the real cause was. Oh, excuse me. Let me back up. I ended up having a DNC with my miscarriage, which is, I believe, dilation and curettage is the word, what the acronym stands for, which essentially um, is much like an early stage um, abortion. It's very similar. It's not, but it's similar because obviously, this pregnancy is not viable, so they have to remove it from the uterus. And so they go in with this device and they go into the uterus and they do this with it and they extract the contents of your uterus. I had like it was a whole, just thinking back on, I'm like, wow. Because I had like oxygen on, and all of this. It was very cold, the place that I went to, and um it was kind of traumatizing, for a young 20 something to go through.
Yeah, I just want to say that there are other ways that we can expel our babies besides having them vacuumed out of us.
Correct.
You have other options. There are
Yes.
teas that we can drink. Black cohosh is one of them. Um, there are other ways that we can expel our babies.
Yes.
And I hold you in that experience
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
that is not easy.
Yeah, it was absolutely
It
not easy.
doesn't have to be that way, and it hasn't
Right.
always been that way either.
Right. Right. Yeah. It was tough. By now I had decided that I wanted to leave home. So I was no longer living at home with the support system that I had. I was living in another state. I lived in Texas, and I had my best friend was there, and I had some other friends there, and she was definitely supportive. And my partner at the time, he struggled because the miscarriage was he took it a lot harder than I thought he would. Um, and so there were times where, because he didn't know how to really handle um, stress, he would remove himself at times where I felt like I needed him the most. So it was definitely an ordeal. And then once I recovered from that, um, I got pregnant again, and it was pretty immediate. It was like the test was positive, and like that next day I started to bleed, and so I went to the hospital again. They did an ultrasound. They didn't see a pregnancy. They thought maybe it was we're still too early. um, and so I waited, went home, went through that process again. Now I'm more educated on what's going on. Also in that time frame, I went to a school. I'm now a medical assistant, um, and I had worked in women's health. So I had more knowledge this time around. And the impact that makes on an experience is tremendous.
They say when you know
Tremendous.
that you do better. That's at least what Maya Angelou said. She's a pretty
Correct.
woman, so we stand
Correct.
by that.
Yes. And so when they didn't see anything in the uterus, I immediately thought, okay, if we let things progress and we still don't see anything, this pregnancy is probably outside of the uterus, which means it could be more of an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the pregnancy gets stuck in the fallopian tubes and doesn't make it all the way into the uterus for implantation. But those hormones are still there, and so it will still cause your cycle to not come, and it will still obviously give you a positive pregnancy test. Um, what ends up happening was I went to another OBGYN office. I got 2 shots in the back of the hip. in the upper buttocks area where some people get their depot injection is where I got that. Well, excuse me, they gave me misoprostol first, and that is a
Misoprostol is an inducing medication, correct?
correct. It is used to help clean out the uterus if you have like a non-viable pregnancy. Is one of the ways that you can expel a pregnancy after a miscarriage. It is what some use in for what they call a medicated abortion. If you choose to, if you're early enough to terminate in that way, then that's also what they give to help clear the uterus of the pregnancy. So anyway, they gave me that to see if it was in the uterus, if that would help. I took that, nothing happened. So that was kind of like confirmation that this is most likely an ectopic pregnancy. So they gave me the 2 shots in each hip and each side, um, and that cleared the pregnancy. That resolved the ectopic pregnancy. So after that, I kept having to go back and get blood tests to watch my pregnancy hormone levels go back down. And once they got back down to 0, then they considered it resolved and
How are you
went from there.
emotionally during this time? Like, how is that kind of?
It's tough. It's tough. Miscarriage, as far as I had known at the time, was not anything that was prominent amongst the women in my family. My mom had never experienced anything like that. And so now I'm starting to kind of second guess my body and why I'm having these issues, especially with, like I said, with kind of my textbook pregnancy and delivery from my daughter. I'm like, what in the world has happened to my body since then? When
Happened?
with
Why me? What, like, is this
correct.
broken
And
now? What's going
yeah, your womanhood starts to feel a little bit compromised. Like I'm like, okay, will I be able to have another child? Why isn't my body, holding these pregnancies the way that it should be? Like, you definitely start to second guess yourself as a woman. And it's challenging mentally, especially after going through that first miscarriage process, and then to go through it again. It was kind of like a little bit more of like defeat what's happening there, still with the same partner. So now he's experiencing, and he's also thinking that it's him because I have a child, and she would, that first my first daughter was not by him, and so he's like, well, clearly this woman can have children, so maybe it's me. So he's dealing with his own challenges, and I'm dealing with my own challenges at the same time. So um when I got pregnant with my second daughter, we held that information for quite some time until I had gone in, and that was again to speak to that anxiety that happens when you find out you're pregnant at 5 weeks. But now they're making you wait to between 8 and 10 weeks before your first visit, and so there was a lot of anxiety during that time. I was constantly thinking that I was going to end up, miscarrying again. I wanted to confirm that the pregnancy was indeed in the uterus this time, all that stuff. So when I got into they saw me, I think, at 8 weeks, just given my history, and the heartbeat was there, and they saw the pregnancy. It was just like, you know, we can now get excited about it. He can now share with family and friends. I can now share with my mom and my family and friends. And but I was also kind of like, this is 9 years later. Okay, so I've kind of gotten to the point where I felt like it was just going to be me and my one daughter. So now I'm having to kind of get my mind wrapped around having 2 kids, and what that's going to look like. I now live in another state, so I moved around a lot. I'm now in Georgia, and we were living in a 3-bedroom house, even though we only needed 2 bedrooms. My third room was a room that I used for makeup clients. So I quickly transitioned that room from a makeup studio into a nursery. Um, and again, a little more education now. I've worked in the women's health space. I've worked in reproductive health before. I kind of have more knowledge, but it's a very conventional Western medicine mindset that I still have. So I went through the motions of that pregnancy. I had a midwife this time, through a OBGYN office, but I was seeing a midwife, which I liked that aspect because I did not like that I only saw my doctor at the tail end of my previous delivery. So I liked the aspect of my midwife being able to see me throughout the pregnancy and throughout the delivery.
Because
Um,
we do not have to just go with anyone that's on call that night. We don't have to deal with that. You are totally
right.
allowed to pick and choose every part of your birth team that you want to be within the space with you. So you have that right, you have that ability.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. Again, this pregnancy was pretty no complications. I did experience hydration is very, 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 very important during pregnancy. I learned that the hard way.
girl,
I
them
ended up
breastfeeding postpartum, just drink
yes,
water.
water, water.
Drink it.
You,
You think you
you need it.
drink
You
some.
need it. Yes. I ended up in the hospital with contractions. I thought I was going into early labor, all of that. I was dehydrated. So hydration is key. You
know
and your
another
baby need
woman.
it.
I know another woman with that story as well. Literally went to the like she was 38 weeks, went to the hospital a few times because the contractions were happening because she was um
Dehydrated. Yeah.
drink
So
water,
it's a
sis. Drink
drink
water. Go
drink the
to a
water.
class right now.
Yeah, right, right. It's very, very, very vital. Even when you're not pregnant, it's vital, but especially when you are with child, especially during your postpartum period. It just water. Okay. If you don't take anything else from this,
Drink some
water.
water, sis.
Hydrate yourself for sure. Um, I do not remember being anemic with this pregnancy. Um, I don't think that was an issue. The only other thing that I experienced was pretty decent swelling that happened towards the end of the pregnancy, which I did not remember having with my first daughter. I could not wear my regular shoes at all. And they did start to get concerned about preeclampsia.
Pregnancy with Kensley. It is the end of April and I am wearing winter boots fuzzy because I cannot fit any of my
Anything, right?
fuzzy winter
Yeah.
boots.
Yes. Yes. I had my daughter in March and yeah, facts. It was like slippers. Like didn't matter where I was going, I was wearing slippers. So um but they, they started, with swelling, they started to get a little bit concerned of preeclampsia. So they kept an eye on my weight, they kept an eye on my blood pressure. None
But
of those things.
also, caveat, some swelling is normal. You have 2 times the
Thank you.
blood volume in your
Correct.
body that you've had at any given point, and you're holding in water and amniotic fluid and so yeah, we're gonna swell up a little bit.
Yes. And that's what I was getting ready to say. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Um no, that's fine. As long as the blood pressure is normal, and you are not just like gaining a ridiculous amount of weight very, very fast. You don't have severe headaches.
The
Um,
headaches is the major
you
key
know,
there.
jaw pain. A lot of things come with your body will tell you if you're entering into that preeclampsia stage. Otherwise, absolutely. Swelling is normal. That
It is
happens.
so normal. You are
Elevated heart rates are normal as well.
that literally sent me to the hospital because my heart was racing and I'm like, is something happening? Oh my god, what is happening? Girl, your heart is just beating fast because it's working really hard because now you're
Exactly.
blood.
Now you're pumping more blood for
That's
sure. That's it. That's it.
yourself a hospital visit.
Exactly. 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 My labor with Destiny, my middle child, was not ideal. Unfortunately, it was nothing like my first labor. It started out very much like my first labor. So again, Destiny, I went past dates with her. This time I was like, I will not go 2 weeks. I will go one. And that is only to give my mom enough time to get here so that she can be present. Um, and so a week after my due date, I went in for my induction. They broke my water. She told me that that no water came out. And I was like, huh? Which raised a red flag for me because shortly before my labor, my daughter's movements were very uncomfortable, and I started to get a lot of pressure in the lower abdomen area and kind of which we would consider like the vaginal area as well. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. And I was requesting another ultrasound just to make sure that everything was right because again, intuition was telling me that something wasn't necessarily right. They declined my third ultrasound. They would not do it.
If that
Um,
ever happens to you, ask them to put that on record. Can you put that on record that you are not allowing me to, or you won't give me this test?
right.
Put that on record, and you'll see how
Absolutely.
fast a lot of them change their mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes. Again, I'm in this space where I work. I've worked in this field, but I'm very Western medicine, conventional medicine minded. And I'm also very uneducated on patient rights, on the things that are necessary, the things that are unnecessary. These things I didn't know. I still didn't know. And again, my first daughter was born at 19. I turned 20. She was born in November. I was 19. I turned 20 in January. Now I'm 29. Okay, so that's the span of age difference between the two kids, 9 years. And or excuse me, I'm 28. And so it's okay. And so um again, I didn't know. So when they break the water and they tell me nothing comes out, I'm looking at my mom and my partner, and we're like, what? So they're like, oh, but don't worry about it. Sometimes the baby's head is in the way, and if she shifts a little bit, then water will come out. So I'm like, okay, we'll leave it at that. So I don't know if water ever came out. Okay, so they never came back and said whether it did or didn't. Again, I went for the epidural. The epidural took fully this time, so I was completely numb from the waist down. Um, my labors progressed fairly quickly, so I went in at 8:30 to get induced, and my daughter was born at 4:30 that afternoon. So it's a pretty, once my body knows what it's doing, it's like, let's get this show on the road. So um, again, knees up here, chin to chest, but now I'm a pro, right? Because I did this already. So I'm like, I got this. And again, I'm bottom heavy. So I got the little hip space to be able to push out a baby fairly quickly. And so I did. I pushed my daughter out in like 3 pushes. And they lay her on my chest. And that part, it was silent. There was nothing happening. And so I'm looking, I'm like, what's I don't hear any cries. They're like, oh, give her some time, mom. She's fine. And I'm like, okay, what's happening? Like, I need y'all. I want to hear some sound come from my child. And still nothing. And so the time feels like forever. It probably wasn't, but it felt like a long time. And so then they give it a little more time. Nothing happens. They call code red over the intercom. A team full of people rush in, snatch Destiny off my chest, put her in the incubator deal in the corner, and they're all going to work on her. Me personally, I'm pissed because I had told y'all what felt like 10 minutes ago, but it probably wasn't. Like I said, it was probably like 5, but it was still a long time. Told y'all that something was not right, and you all were telling me to give my daughter more time, and I'm telling you all that she needs to be making a sound. And so I'm pissed off. I'm scared. I'm all the things. And so I am going off on my midwife at this point because I'm like, I told you that something was wrong. And my mom is bringing me back in. She's like, you know what, we're gonna focus, we're gonna go within right now. And so that's what we did. And we went in, we were praying about it. I mean, just all the things. And we heard the cry.
Sweet, beautiful moment when that
Yes.
cry happened.
Oh,
Relief.
yes.
The relief.
And it was absolutely traumatizing for me. I thought I was gonna go home alone. you know, and it was very scary.
And then because of your experience of going into delivery twice and coming home alone, I'm sure it definitely it hit a little bit different that time as
Exactly, exactly. And you start replaying. Again, let me back up a little bit. Before my epidural, I was in pain, and so I opted to take pain medication. And I'd heard that certain pain medications could be transferred over to the baby and cause grogginess in the child when they're born. And so I asked that. I said, is this going to have any effect on the baby? And they said, oh, no, 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 it's not. It's not. It's still very early. And by the time you give birth, this medication will have worn off and it won't have an effect on the child. So I'm like, okay. So I take that pain medication, which did not help. I should add. I don't know what it was. I think it was a Vicodin or something, or a Percocet or something like that, but it didn't help. And so that was before my epidural. So upon thinking about the events that happened up until her birth, a couple of things I think, excuse me, contributed to the fact that she came out and didn't cry right away. And the first one is, I think, the pain medication. The second is that I pushed her out very fast. And when I pushed her out that fast, so the baby has fluid in their lungs while they're breathing in the amniotic fluid the entire time that they're in the uterus. And as they're coming through the birth canal, that water is expelled from the lungs as they're coming through, and then they take in that first breath of air, and the cry happens and all that. Amongst the fact that it's cold, bright, and all the other things, in the hospital setting.
that same thing
Um,
happened with Tinsley because I pushed her out. It wasn't extremely fast or anything, but my water broke really late into my labor. And so that squeeze through the birth canal was the only squeeze that she had
mm,
gotten with the waters being released. And so she
right.
retained fluids probably until like day 3 or 4. And she literally just released the fluids by crying. It
Yeah.
hurt me to like hear her cry that way, but she
Right.
needed that to like clear out the
Clear
blockage
out the uh-huh.
and all of that.
Right.
So thank you for that, because that was another thing that sent me to the emergency room after, because I was like, she's is she breathing okay?
Right. Yes. Right. Because their little airways are so narrow, it sounds horrible.
To the
It's
point where she didn't even want to eat breastfeed because she was choosing to breathe over eating, and so
right.
we had that challenge in the beginning. So also
Yes.
that is normal. Kids having fluid within their lungs or sounding a little like there's something in there, because they were in a liquid
Yes.
environment and they have to clear it out.
Yes. And newborn babies only breathe through their nose. They don't mouth breathe. And so that's why Kinsley was choosing to breathe over feeding, because she literally can't do both because the nose is congested. It's got the fluid in there, and right. And so yeah, so that was all part of it. And so it was kind of a rough start getting her there. So then, of course, when you have an introduction like that, the newborn score is low initially, so they have to do it again and all of this. And then I remember them putting something in a container and taking it. And I to this day don't know what they took from my afterbirth, um that wasn't the placenta. They did take that, but this was something different. It went um into a little container to be sent off.
I
And
that
they
before. I'm not sure. I had seen that in a cesarean before.
yeah,
I'm
I'm not sure what
not sure what
they
it was.
never shared. Yeah, they never shared. I kept asking, and they kept acting like I I didn't see it, or wasn't aware. It was almost
What
like,
was
oh,
it? What did
so
he take? There
so much was going on, right? So much was going on. Da, 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 da. Again, I tore again. Um, Nobody offered me again if I wanted to be stitched up
very,
or not.
very normal.
Yes,
Very normal.
yes. One thing I will say though, is that I had both of my children were what you would consider kind of like on the smaller side, 6 pounds and some ounces. And so a lot of that tearing can come from one, you're numb, so you don't feel the contractions yourself. You don't know how hard to push, and how much pressure is going to be needed. And so you're just pushing. Um, and then also, there was no kind of like preparation, of that area and getting ready to birth the baby. So
For me, for
yeah,
she gonna
yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh, I love it. I love it. That's so sweet. Baby girl's gonna be on the move. She was like, get your gates, get your all of that.
I'm recording these moments. Like, I love that we're doing this right now because I wouldn't have had it if
Yeah,
like we weren't here.
that's true. That is so
I
true.
get to show your daddy that. I get to cut this out and show your
Yes.
daddy.
That is so awesome. So amazing. So it was a very different from my first. I think because of the nature surrounding the delivery, I did experience what I would call some postpartum depression. Um, I was very down. Um, they also discharged me like the next day, which with my first, I remember being in the hospital for like 2 days after, but like with my second, they just was like, "You're good," and sent me home. Um, and I remember feeling a lot more down. I was not happy, joyful. I was still scared. I was still nervous. I was still hoping that everything was okay with the baby, because I felt like so much was kept from me. I don't feel like the people at the hospital were open. I don't feel like that midwife that I'd chosen was open. And so it's very important to get to know the people that are supporting you in your labor and your or excuse me, in your
You
prenatal period and your labor.
interview
Interview them,
like it's
learn
a
them.
job. Literally give them situational questions. How would you handle this situation if my waters are open for 12 hours? What
Creating a birth plan is important, which I did not have with my second pregnancy. I also didn't take any sort of childbirth education. I felt like I was seasoned enough now where I knew the things. And
this is
I
your
was
third
very
birth now. You're going into like I got this.
I was very naive on this when it came to that. I was like, oh, okay, the midwife, but I like I said, I did not interview her. I did not ask the questions. I just saw her at my scheduled visits and we just went through those things and that was pretty much it. And at the time of the delivery, I do not feel that she had was in my corner, or was looking out for me the way I thought she would have. Um, so my mom stayed with us for about 10 days after. Um, and I was very, very scared for her to leave. Um, I wanted her there. I felt like having her there kept me sane. And so I was very nervous about her leaving. Um, and I had moments I would, the fathers are never allowed to be at home as long as the moms are. So her dad had to go back to work fairly quickly after I gave birth. And he didn't, we only had one car. So I was dropping him off at work. And I remember coming home when he worked in the morning. So I remember being on my way home and just breaking down in the car and just crying. And so I pulled over, I let it all out. And in the midst of my crying, I'm praying, I'm I'm just releasing. And it sounds so odd, but after I had that release, I was okay. I came home, I shared that with my mother, I was like, I'm going to be all right. I appreciate you coming and being here, and I'm going to be good. And when she left, I was okay. I
And
was
I
okay.
wanna speak to that because for a lot of women, it's day 3, which is when the milk comes in. That where that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of this is so much. What did I sign up for? A lot of that feeling is the prolactin hormone and that oxytocin flowing. There's so many things that are plummeting, rising during
Mhm.
this time. And for a lot of women, day 3, when that milk comes in, I know for you it was a little bit later, but for a lot of that feeling, because for
Oh
me,
no, it was around that time.
yeah,
It
for me,
was. Yeah.
that was that.
Yeah.
And it was, I cried like it was just release
Yes.
everything, like the weight of the world was like on your shoulders and you finally get to release it. So I understand.
Absolutely.
um and that is a normal experience.
Yeah.
um and yeah, thank you.
And I also want to say that, for me, that release was exactly what I needed to be able to kind of persevere and keep going, and feeling a lot better about being a new mom again and things like that. And for some women, it takes longer. You may have that release
Absolutely.
5 times. You may have it every day
You might have
for
9 months.
correct. There's no time frame, there's no one and done, or anything like that. It can take literally as long as you need. But just don't be afraid to release that. Don't feel like you have to hold it in, to be strong and things like that. You need to purge those feelings and emotions and those and all of that stuff. And so, um, all that I had been holding, all of the trauma that I had experienced at the hospital, um, I just kind of let all of that go. Being at home now with 2 kids, my older daughter was now 9 years old and going to school, and my partner at the time was working early mornings, so I was staying up at night and allowing him to sleep so that he can go to work, and things like that. So it was a lot, but just that release helped me regain my composure as far as being able to kind of handle all these things, and a routine, and still calling my mom and other women who have done this on a daily basis, to help, you know, and to get advice, and things like that. And my best friend was coming up and staying with me sometimes and helping out. And my mom left me, I don't know how many meals, to help alleviate some of that pressure as far as cooking and things like that. So all of that had to work together, in order for me to be able to do
The
that.
village had to come through for us
Exactly.
to heal properly, heal together, heal with community, with each other. We have done this for so long, and we need to get back to supporting our women, supporting our mothers, because it is a necessity.
Yes,
It's a necessity.
absolutely. 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 So we can talk about my third pregnancy and delivery, which is by far, um, I hate to say a favorite because I obviously love all my kids the same, but it is definitely my favorite um, birthing story. So
Thank you so much for tuning into that video. If give us a subscribe, hit the like button, and be we'll be here with more videos very soon. Say peace.